Welcome. Good morning, and welcome to live stream worship with First Unitarian Church of Hobart, Indiana. My name is Maggie Reister, and I am immediate past board member, and I serve on worship ministry in the congregation. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and hers. Welcome. We are a theologically diverse community of Unitarian Universalists. Together we grow spiritually, build community, and live our values in the world. Our service leaders today are Gail Thomas and myself, Maggie Reister. If you have been with us before, our service will work like a Facebook video with the opportunity to be interactive. Many thanks to our technical crew, James Johnson, John Halstead, Valerie Lambert, for making the magic here possible. You at home will be able to share comments, appreciation, and significant milestones in your lives during the service, just by typing a message. This way, we all have a chance to greet our neighbor, share joys and sorrows, and you can generously share your offering via PayPal or by mailing a check to the church. Thank you, John, for moderating this process. I do have a few brief announcements this morning. The worship team meets in 1 week, next Sunday after our worship service. 2, the congregational vote to post a Black Lives Matter sign in front of the church will take place in 2 weeks on July 19th. And 3, the board is meeting this Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the church with social distancing and also by Zoom. There is a pre-board discussion at 6:30 before the board meeting. All are welcome to attend. Now let your Facebook and Twitter friends know that you are attending worship with hashtag First Unitarian Hobart. Now, take a deep breath and join us in a spirit of reverence.
Join me in the lighting of our chalice. The words will be displayed on the screen. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Our opening words start with a piece of prose by Maureen Killoran, Praise the World in All Its Pain and Blessing. We are called today from the midst of pain and challenge. We are called to praise the world. From a world that appears broken, we are called to praise life's moments of joy and grace. From time that seems to freeze in ongoing exchanges of platitudes and blame, we are called to reach out to those around us, to connect with those we care about, to try to make amends with those from whom we are estranged. The world is too fragile. There is too much pain. Let us bring our hearts together on this day. Let us praise the mutilated world in all its blessings and its pain. The title of this service is Redemption Song. That title is really the name of a song by reggae artist Bob Marley. Have you heard Bob Marley's Redemption Song? I was surprised that we were able to play it this morning. I have listened to it many times, but when I was doing my research for today, many things I read reminded me of this song. I started thinking about redemption and about forgiveness. Who needs forgiveness? How to forgive? What have I been able to forgive myself? What do I hang on to? What does it mean to truly forgive my brother, my sister, my friend, and myself? Aren't some things just unforgivable? My mind was spinning. Many times I have asked my higher power to help me to let go of the past, to forgive. For example, the discrimination my children have experienced. The song inspired me that we all need forgiveness, and forgiveness leads us to redemption. Sometimes it just doesn't seem possible to find peace. The problem is bigger than me, and I can't fix it. Still, the song played in my head. Marley's song was inspired by Marcus Garvey, African-American leader during the 1920s, who says that we limit our possibilities because we are bound up in limiting beliefs. And what did that mean? Is that what I'm doing? He even uses the term mental slavery. Those are very strong words. Marcus Garvey had a huge following in a time when print and radio were the primary media. His whole quote explains it better. It goes like this: we are going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery because whilst others might free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. The man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of the other man who uses his mind. And that's the direct quote from Marcus Garvey. I can't imagine a Unitarian allowing other people to control our thoughts. We all have plenty of thoughts. Just ask us. Forgiveness is the first step in emancipating the mind. None but ourselves can free the mind. Free our mind. Still, I continue to explore. Forgiveness, I learned, is at the heart of most spiritual practices. According to Judaism, forgiveness is considered a pious act. Atonement requires stopping the harm, express regret, confess, and repent. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. In Christian teachings, the Lord's Prayer brings forgiveness into focus. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespassed against us. And Jesus taught that we should forgive unconditionally, that we should love our enemies and turn the other cheek. In Islam, forgiveness is a prerequisite for genuine peace. Those who pardon and maintain righteousness are rewarded by God. Theologically, anyway, forgiveness is the key. It opens the door to authentic relationship and inner peace. Simple, not so easy. As a UU, I truly believe that none of us are beyond redemption. But what does it take to get there? How do I practice our first principle, the respect and dignity of every person? Every person. Yes, every person. Now I would like for you to join in singing the opening hymn, number 18. The words will be printed on your screen, and the song is What Wondrous Love.
wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, of my soul. Takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gathered round, oh my soul, oh my soul. Friends to me gathered round, oh my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends, to pain and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end, I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end, I will sing.
And now please join in the affirmation of faith. The words are on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer. And this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
From all that dwell below the sky, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land and every tongue. Amen.
Good morning. This is our reading for today. Theoretically, even our criminal justice system is built on the idea of redemption. For most crimes, there's a release date. It is an implicit acknowledgement that we're more than our worst moments, that we are capable of becoming our better selves. But in reality, as Van Jones shows in his compelling CNN series, The Redemption Project, American prisons are built on the idea of retributive justice, where the primary goal is to punish and seek vengeance. The problem is that adding harm to harm inevitably produces more harm. Too often, people come out of prison bitter, not better. Restorative justice shifts our understanding of crime and punishment and asks us to use a completely different logic. The goal is not to create more damage, but to create more healing.
The idea of redemption. How did this idea come about? When preparing for this service, Maggie and I were looking for information and sharing resources. She sent me this article by Ariana Huffington, who is the founder of the Huffington Post. And in this article, I read, quote, "We have to decide who we want to be, not just collectively, but as individuals. And we have that power. Real change has to be grounded in the belief that people can be better." So I pondered that, and then I went on to read some words by Desmond Tutu on his Forgiveness Project page. And he says, "To forgive is not just to be altruistic, it is the best form of self-interest. It is also a process that does not include hatred and anger. These emotions are all part of being human. When I talk of forgiveness, I mean the belief that I can come out of the other side as a better person, becoming a better person than the one being consumed by anger or hate. Remaining in that state locks me in a state of victimhood, making me almost dependent on the perpetrator." And that's the part that I really dwelled on, being in a state of victimhood, being chained almost to the perpetrator. So if I can find it in myself to forgive, then I am no longer chained to the perpetrator, whoever that is, the one that caused pain. I can move on, and I can even help the perpetrator to become a better person too. As in the Christian faith, as we forgive those that trespass against us. But the process of forgiveness also requires acknowledgement on the part of the perpetrator that they have committed an offense, even unintentional. My mind was exploding with analysis on this: how to stop being the perpetrator and reclaim our humanity. The following thoughts happened in my mind in an instant. My internal experience as I read these words was awareness of how the focus was on people of color, that they have given their perpetrator of abuse and oppression throughout centuries, for 400 years. They have forgiven and still forgive currently. They forgive the collective perpetrator, white society, American society. And that is what keeps inequality in place. We who stay silent, or we who are unaware of the oppression and the PTSD that still follows the Black population of the United States, with 400 years of embedded racism at every level of society. I'm talking about systemic racism, how it persists in our schools, offices, court system, police departments, and elsewhere. Not only that, but they have less availability of wealth and distribution, less employment, less education, more criminal injustice, less housing, and more surveillance, and less health care. And still, they forgive. Still, they strive to fulfill their American dream and to forgive, to work in this system of gross unfairness until something happens. Something happens. The news comes on and talks about names of African Americans who are no longer with us. That chain on the neck, it didn't disappear regardless of their forgiveness. That chain got yanked back to inflict pain. And as the system of 400 years of embedded racism reminds us, all of us, it is not over. It is in our midst. Then my awareness shifted to the perpetrator, the ones who don't do anything, or worse, even participate. The words of Desmond Tutu come back to me, and that chain is on my neck too. More people are feeling that chain. I heard many of you feel that chain this morning. With every violent murder at the hands of the police, we feel that chain. I am feeling that chain, and I can't breathe. when it is our breath, we start paying attention. I need redemption. I need to acknowledge where I am contributing, even if just with silence. I need to forgive myself. I am committed to doing the hard work of examining my heart and my mind. When white society has felt the pain from that chain of inequality, then change will happen. We will be able to understand and bring real, lasting change to the way people of color are seen and treated. All of us are worthy of redemption.
The healing power of redemption. Real change, I believe, needs to be grounded in the belief that people can be better. The growing movement sparked by the outrage over George Floyd's murder and countless others, including Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, has led to a long overdue reckoning with racism in our country. Symbols that were once celebrated are being, perhaps rightly, taken down. But true change at the systemic level is going to have to include change at the personal level. We just have to decide who we want to be. I have to decide who I want to be, not just collectively, but as individuals. And we have that power. As Gail said, real change needs to be grounded in the belief that people can be better. We can become a better version of ourselves. Many of us have within us that drive for becoming, for self-discovery, for meaning. As Michelle Obama wrote in her best-selling memoir, Becoming, for me, becoming isn't about arriving somewhere or achieving a certain aim. I see it instead as forward motion, a means of evolving, a way to reach continuously toward a better self. The journey doesn't end. So how do we tap into that vision of a better self? Well, that's the work of a lifetime, but it starts in small, everyday ways. It's about changing our behavior, not just manners or etiquette, but behavior that flows from the heart. In his study on the roots of selflessness and altruism, Dr. Irvin Staub from the University of Massachusetts Amherst looked at those who had risked their lives in order to protect Jews during World War II. He wanted to see what made someone choose to be an ally as opposed to a bystander. Goodness, like evil, often begins in small steps, he told the New York Times. Heroes evolve. They aren't born. Very often the rescuers made only a small commitment at the start to hide someone for a day or two. But once they had taken that step, they began to see themselves differently as someone who helps. What starts as mere willingness becomes intense involvement. It's exactly how habit changes work, by being willing to take a first step, believing in the possibility that we can be someone better, and then following our aspiration and continuing to take small steps. That's how we transform ourselves. We become virtuous by the practice of virtue, empathetic by the practice of empathy, and compassionate by the practice of compassion. We build up our moral muscle by exercising it. Without the authority of this moral instinct to improve ourselves, our ethical sense becomes nothing more than a fear that there may be something or someone watching. Focusing less on ourselves, reaching out to others, and widening the circle of our concern are the best ways to create more healing and to connect with our better selves. We've long known the power of connection and empathy. In 63 AD, Seneca wrote, "No one can live happily who has regard for himself alone." and transforms everything into a question of his own utility. Science has confirmed that empathy, compassion, and giving, which is simply putting empathy and compassion into action, are the foundation of both our well-being and our better selves.
So we're moving on to retrieval and repossession. History is moving very fast right now, and that is as it should be. The building blocks of systemic racism should have toppled long ago. But to make the most of this moment and create lasting change and bring others along with us, we also need to remember the healing power of redemption. As author and activist Bell Hooks asked, how do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed? Poet and prophet Audre Lorde told those embarking on the next great journey that it was their small actions, their everyday decisions, and how they moved through this world that not only gave them power, but would define our future. She did not offer them a great redeeming moment. She simply steered them back to the daily struggle, to what we might call faithful living. As our tradition says, we may fail 1,000 times, but let us begin again in love. The final reading is based on a sermon by Robin Tanner, a Unitarian Universalist minister and poet. The possibility of redemption. One of my mentors, the Reverend Dr. William Barber, often reminds me that in movement work, you must always believe the redemption of your enemy is possible. This year, I've resisted a New Year's resolution to believe and experience people in my life as multidimensional, to hold out the possibility of redemption, and in so doing, to live into the fullness of universalism, even for the enemy far and within. Once you do away with the idea of people as fixed, static entities, then you see that people can change and there is hope. And this is a direct quote from her sermon. Is your congregation handicapped accessible? It's a story. Yes, it is, I replied. Great, I'll see if my wife will bring me on Sunday. There he was the very next Sunday. Over the next few months, I learned a lot about John, a Vietnam veteran who returned home to serve as a police officer for 25 years. John had spent his entire life outside of his time in Vietnam in one place, one church, one town. He had an urgency to tell me his story because his health was not good. He found himself in the midst of a spiritual quest. He no longer believed the same truths of a conservative Christianity that his family did. Over the next 2 years, I spent time with his family. They were all exceptionally kind and pleasant, but beneath the surface was John's anxiety about their reaction to his beliefs, his grief over his terminal diagnosis, and their fear for his salvation. Add to that my own anxiety that John might have a death without suffering. The day before John died, I was there offering him a meditation about transitioning, while his childhood minister stood beside me offering a prayer. At the funeral, it struck me that many people there saw one version of John. He was fixed in their minds as they first knew him. It's not unusual. We have narratives that guide the way we experience and know one another. In my own life, people often get frozen at a point for me. My mentor, Reverend Dr. William Barber, reminds me, again, you must always believe the redemption of your enemy is possible. Let us learn to recover, to reclaim our humanity, and possess human dignity for all. I pray we will all raise our voices and sing songs of freedom and redemption song. Thank you.
While the music plays, you are invited to make a monetary offering. The offering link will be posted in the chat box. You can make an offering anytime after the service as well. If the chat box is not visible to you, click chat at the bottom of your computer screen, or if you are on a phone, click participants, then chat. Please enjoy our offering music from Jeremy Jacobson. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. And now please join me in singing hymn number 205, Amazing Grace.
Please join me in the closing words, and we'll read the entire responsive reading together. A Litany of Atonement by Robert Eller Isaacs. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. I forgive myself and each other. I begin again in love. For each time when my fears have made me rigid and inaccessible, I forgive myself and each other. I begin again in love. For each time I have struck out in anger with no just cause, I forgive myself and each other. I begin again in love. For each time my greed has blinded me to the needs of others, I forgive myself and each other. I begin again in love. For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone, I forgive myself and each other. I begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, I forgive myself and each other. I begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, I forgive myself and each other. I begin again in love. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, I forgive myself and each other. I begin again in love.
I'll go. I'll go. I'll go. Lord, I'll go. If the Lord want somebody, here am I. Oh Lord, send me. I may be motherless, but I'll go. Maybe motherless, but I'll go. If the Lord want somebody, here am I. Here am I. Here am I. Oh Lord, I just want you to send me.
That song is by Pamela Pruitt, and it is from her first professional CD, I Worship. Please join me in the words to extinguish the chalice. The words are on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.